On June 14, 1986, at approximately 6:47 p.m., experienced wilderness guide Richard Keller departed from Manitowoc Harbor, Wisconsin, for what was supposed to be a routine evening reconnaissance trip on Lake Michigan. At 43 years old, Keller had over 20 years of experience navigating the Great Lakes region and was known among local fishing communities as the human compass for his uncanny sense of direction and weather prediction abilities. Keller's 24-foot vessel, the Northern Star, was last spotted by Harbor Supervisor Marcus Jennings at approximately 7:15 p.m., heading northeast toward the deeper waters of the lake. According to the detailed log Keller always maintained, he was planning to map a new route for an upcoming guided fishing expedition scheduled for the following weekend. Weather conditions that evening were reported as mild, 50 to 8 degrees Celsius with light northeast winds at 5-7 knots, water temperature at 52 degrees, and visibility at 12 miles with scattered clouds. The National Weather Service had issued no alerts or warnings. By all accounts, conditions were optimal for experienced boaters. When Keller failed to return by midnight, his wife, Linda Keller, contacted the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department. Deputy Sheriff Howard Reynolds noted in his initial report that Mrs. Keller emphasized that her husband had never been late returning from the water in their 18 years of marriage, a detail that prompted immediate concern. What investigators couldn't explain was the sudden and complete radio silence from Keller's vessel after 8:23 p.m., despite his state-of-the-art communication equipment that had been inspected and certified just 1 week prior. More troubling was the radar anomaly reported by the Coast Guard station at Two Rivers just minutes before Keller's last radio transmission, a brief but distinctive circular pattern of interference that the technician on duty, Lieutenant Samuel Davies, would later describe as unlike anything I've seen in 15 years of service, almost as if something created a perfect circle of disruption around Keller's position. The search effort began at first light on June 15th, with the U.S. Coast Guard deploying 3 vessels and a helicopter from the Traverse City Air Station. By noon, the search had expanded to include vessels from the Michigan State Police Marine Division, the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources, and over 30 private boats volunteered by the local fishing community. For 6 consecutive days, search teams scoured a grid pattern covering over 1,200 square miles of Lake Michigan. Captain Eleanor Whitman of the Coast Guard later stated in her official report that the search conditions were unusually favorable, with calm waters and excellent visibility, making the complete absence of debris or signals from the Northern Star all the more baffling. The investigation team, led by FBI Special Agent Robert Kincaid, uncovered several puzzling elements. Keller's boat had been equipped with multiple redundant safety systems, an EPIRB emergency beacon, a marine VHF radio, emergency flares, and even a backup hand-cranked radio. None were ever activated. The vessel's hull had recently undergone a comprehensive inspection and was certified as structurally sound. Linda Keller provided investigators with her husband's meticulously maintained logbooks dating back 15 years. Special Agent Kincaid noted that these records revealed a methodical, safety-conscious professional who documented every minor incident or equipment malfunction with exceptional detail. The complete absence of distress signals suggested whatever had occurred had happened with extreme suddenness. Perhaps most perplexing were the statements from 4 separate individuals who reported unusual aerial lights in the northeastern sky over Lake Michigan between 8:15 and 8:45 p.m. on the night of Keller's disappearance. 3 commercial airline pilots flying routes over the southern portion of the lake reported instrument anomalies during the same time frame, with Captain Jefferson Barnes of American Airlines Flight 242 recording in his flight log. Momentary compass deviation of 40 degrees at 8:27 p.m. EST, duration approximately 12 seconds. No turbulence or other environmental factors noted. As days turned into weeks, the search for Richard Keller transitioned from rescue to recovery. The Coast Guard employed side-scanning sonar technology to map the lake bed in the area where Keller was last detected, but found no evidence of a sunken vessel. Marine biologist Dr. Rebecca Westlake from the University of Wisconsin remarked that Lake Michigan's depth and currents can obscure even large objects, but the complete absence of floating debris is highly irregular in cases of maritime accidents. The disappearance devastated the tight-knit community of Manitowoc. Richard Keller had been actively involved in conservation efforts, and had established a youth program teaching wilderness navigation and lake safety. Linda Keller maintained that her husband's disappearance couldn't be explained by conventional theories. Richard could navigate Lake Michigan blindfolded, she told reporters. The idea that he became disoriented or made a critical error is simply inconceivable to anyone who knew him. In August 1986, 2 months after Keller vanished, commercial fisherman Thomas Granville reported something unusual to investigators. While working approximately 17 miles northeast of Manitowoc, Granville observed what he described as a perfect circle of dead fish, about 80 feet in diameter. Water samples collected from the site showed unexplained trace elements, including unusual concentrations of aluminum and barium, along with electromagnetic readings significantly higher than the surrounding water. Dr. Elias Monroe from the NOAA called these findings anomalous but inconclusive. The FBI's investigation took an unexpected turn when they discovered that Keller had been documenting unusual occurrences on the lake for nearly 3 years. Hidden in a locked filing cabinet in his home office, agents found a journal containing detailed accounts of light phenomena Keller had observed during night expeditions. The journal included precise coordinates, times, and hand-drawn diagrams of aerial formations that moved in ways that, according to Keller's notes, defied conventional aircraft capabilities. Most significant was Keller's final journal entry dated June 12th, just 2 days before his disappearance. Third sighting this month at coordinates 44-17N, 87-666 Light pattern identical to April event. Will bring specialized equipment Thursday evening for proper documentation. If my suspicions are correct, there's a recurring phenomenon that deserves scientific attention. Before we dive deeper into the mystery of Richard Keller's disappearance, I'd like to take a moment to ask, if you're finding this investigation as fascinating as I do, be sure to subscribe to the channel. With dozens of meticulously researched cases like this one, you won't want to miss our weekly explorations into the unexplained. Now let's get back to the Lake Michigan mystery that's about to take an unprecedented turn. The investigation stalled until November 1986, when Coast Guard Lieutenant Davies, the radar technician who had observed the circular interference pattern the night of Keller's disappearance, came forward with information he had initially withheld. During a closed-door meeting with FBI agents, Davies revealed that the interference pattern had been nearly identical to one he had observed 2 years earlier during another boat disappearance near Beaver Island. That case had been officially attributed to a sudden squall, but Davies had harbored doubts. "I didn't report the similarity initially because I feared professional repercussions," Davies stated in his affidavit, "but I can no longer ignore the pattern matching. In both cases, we observed a perfect circular disruption approximately 80 feet in diameter that moved at a consistent speed of 32 knots, regardless of wind or current direction." When shown Keller's journal entries about light phenomena, Davies appeared visibly shaken. The coordinates in Keller's journal for his April sighting match exactly with where we tracked another circular anomaly that month. We dismissed it as equipment malfunction at the time. The FBI expanded their investigation to include similar nautical disappearances across the Great Lakes region. A pattern emerged. 7 cases spanning from 1978 to 1986 shared key characteristics: experienced navigators vanishing in good weather conditions, complete absence of debris, failure of all communication equipment, and in 3 cases, reports of unusual lights or radar anomalies. Dr. James Forrester, an atmospheric physicist from MIT who was consulted on the case, noted that the electromagnetic readings from the dead fish circle site showed patterns consistent with extremely focused microwave radiation, the kind that could potentially disable electronic equipment. When pressed about whether such technology existed, Forrester responded carefully, "Not in any conventional aircraft or naval vessel that I'm aware of." By early 1987, the investigation had attracted attention from higher levels of government. DARPA scientist Dr. Victoria Hayes arrived in Manitowoc, ostensibly to examine the water sample data, but local officials noted that her credentials granted her unusual access to all case files. Linda Keller reported that Dr. Hayes interviewed her for over 6 hours, with particular interest in Richard's journal and his background in electrical engineering, a detail that had received little attention in previous interviews. What remained unexplained was how a 24-foot vessel could vanish without trace. Marine salvage expert Captain William Hargrove, who had recovered dozens of sunken vessels from Lake Michigan, stated that, even with the lake's notorious currents, something should have surfaced: life jackets, fuel containers, the emergency ditch bag that regulations required Keller to have aboard. When investigators located the manufacturer of Keller's radio equipment, engineers confirmed that the simultaneous failure of primary and backup systems would be statistically improbable without an external cause. The case took a startling turn when the FBI interviewed Dr. Marcus Thompson, a professor of astronomy at Northwestern University, who had been conducting a long-term study of anomalous aerial phenomena over the Great Lakes. Thompson revealed that his research team had documented a significant spike in unusual aerial activity over Lake Michigan between 1984 and 1986. "We tracked over 200 incidents of objects exhibiting flight characteristics inconsistent with conventional aircraft," Thompson stated. "Most notably, objects that could remain stationary regardless of wind conditions, then accelerate to speeds exceeding 700 miles per hour with no sonic boom." When shown the coordinates from Keller's journal, Thompson confirmed that they aligned with 3 of his team's most significant documented events. The Thompson research team had installed specialized camera equipment along the shoreline that captured distant lights performing maneuvers impossible for conventional aircraft. Most compelling was footage from April 1986, the same month as one of Keller's journal entries, showing multiple lights converging over the lake, remaining stationary for approximately 22 minutes, then dispersing at speeds calculated at over 800 miles per hour in different directions. In March 1987, Naval Intelligence Officer Commander Lawrence Blackwood joined the investigation, specifically requesting access to the radar data from the night of Keller's disappearance. His official report remains heavily redacted, but declassified portions indicate that he identified signature patterns consistent with observed phenomena in restricted waters near naval testing grounds. When interviewed years later for a documentary, Blackwood would only say, "There were aspects of the Keller case that aligned with certain classified observations made by naval vessels in the Pacific. I can't elaborate further except to say that the technology to create such effects existed, just not in the civilian sector." Linda Keller continued her own investigation, coordinating with the families of others who had disappeared under similar circumstances on the Great Lakes. She discovered that 4 of the 7 missing navigators, including her husband, had backgrounds in either electrical engineering or advanced communications technology. "This can't be coincidental," she told investigators. "These weren't random victims. They were selected because of their technical knowledge." The case gained national attention when renowned physicist Dr. J. Allen Hynek, former scientific advisor to the Air Force's Project Blue Book, made public statements about the Keller disappearance. Hynek, who had become a leading civilian investigator of unexplained aerial phenomena, noted that the Great Lakes region had consistently demonstrated patterns of anomalous events that warrant serious scientific investigation. He specifically cited the circular pattern observed on radar and the electromagnetic anomalies as consistent with close-range observations documented in multiple countries by military and civilian pilots. In a controversial move, the FBI briefly classified portions of the Keller investigation in late 1987, citing national security implications. This classification was met with significant public backlash, prompting Congressman William Preston of Wisconsin to demand greater transparency. "The families of these missing individuals deserve answers," Preston stated during a congressional hearing. "If there's technology being tested on the Great Lakes that poses risks to civilian vessels, the public has a right to know." The most significant development came in September 1988, when commercial fishermen Ted Branson and Mike Holloway discovered an unusual object tangled in their nets approximately 13 miles northeast of Manitowoc, precisely where Keller had last been detected on radar. The object was Richard Keller's brass compass, a distinctive navigational tool custom-made by a maritime instrument specialist in Portland, Maine. Linda Keller positively identified it as her husband's prized possession, which he had nicknamed Old Faithful for its reliability. FBI forensic analyst Dr. Samantha Reynolds conducted the initial examination of the compass and documented several anomalous features. The compass housing shows evidence of exposure to extreme heat, approximately 100 degrees Fahrenheit, yet only on its external surface. The internal mechanism remains intact and functional, she noted in her report. Most puzzling were the markings etched into the brass surface, a series of intricate geometric symbols arranged in a precise circular pattern around the compass face. Dr. Reynolds's analysis determined that the markings had been created through application of a highly focused energy source, similar to precision laser engraving, but with characteristics inconsistent with any known commercial or industrial equipment. Metallurgical tests showed that the brass had undergone molecular changes that, according to materials scientist Dr. Kenneth Abernathy, would require technology not currently available in the commercial sector. More baffling was the compass itself. Despite 2 years in lake water, it showed no corrosion and the internal fluid remained clear. When tested, the compass exhibited unusual properties, orienting not to magnetic north but to a fixed point approximately 17 degrees east of true north. This deviation remained constant regardless of the compass's location, defying basic principles of magnetic navigation. The symbols themselves became the subject of intense analysis. Dr. Sewai, Elizabeth Chen, a linguist specializing in mathematical communication systems, observed that the symbols display internal consistency, suggestive of a communication system, rather than random markings. There are repeating elements and what appears to be a mathematical progression in their arrangement. When the pattern was analyzed using advanced algorithmic approaches, researchers discovered that the symbols contained embedded geometric ratios corresponding to the fundamental mathematical constant pi, carried out to a precision of 32 decimal places. On February 17, 1994, almost 8 years after Keller's disappearance, the case took an unexpected turn when former Navy SEAL Commander Jackson Miller approached the FBI with information about an operation he had participated in during the summer of 1986. According to Miller, his specialized unit had been tasked with retrieving an object of non-terrestrial origin from the bottom of Lake Michigan in late June 1986, just weeks after Keller vanished. Miller provided documentation showing that his team had conducted a classified recovery operation at coordinates that placed them less than 2 miles from Keller's last known position. "We were told it was a downed Soviet satellite containing sensitive technology," Miller stated, "but what we recovered wasn't Russian or from anywhere else on Earth." Miller described a disc-shaped object approximately 30 feet in diameter, with no visible seams or fasteners. According to his testimony, the object emitted no radiation but created a measurable electromagnetic field that interfered with their equipment. Most significantly, Miller reported seeing precise geometric markings along the object's perimeter that the brass hat seemed especially interested in documenting. When shown photographs of the symbols on Keller's compass, Miller confirmed they were identical in style and execution to what he had observed on the retrieved object. Miller further revealed that his team had been subjected to extensive debriefing procedures and required to sign additional non-disclosure agreements specific to the operation. "In 20 years of special operations, I never experienced that level of compartmentalization and security," he noted. The FBI attempted to corroborate Miller's account through official channels, but the Navy denied any record of such an operation. However, meteorological data confirmed an unusual 2-day gap in satellite imagery of Lake Michigan on the exact dates Miller specified for the recovery operation, a gap that NOAA officials attributed to routine equipment calibration. Linda Keller, now armed with this new information, filed Freedom of Information Act requests with multiple agencies. The heavily redacted documents she received confirmed that a special recovery operation had indeed been conducted in the area, though all details of what was recovered had been obscured. One partially visible section mentioned, "Possible civilian witness to event requires assessment," raising questions about whether Richard Keller had observed something he wasn't meant to see. The most compelling evidence emerged in December 1994, when Dr. Harold Werner, a physicist who had worked as a contractor for naval intelligence, came forward after his retirement. Werner revealed that he had been part of a specialized team assembled to analyze materials recovered from Lake Michigan in 1986. According to Werner, the materials exhibited properties inconsistent with any known terrestrial manufacturing capabilities. Werner's testimony included details about the government's analysis of the compass. The symbols weren't carved or etched. They were created by selectively altering the molecular structure of the brass itself, a process requiring precision control at the atomic level. When asked about the technology capable of such modifications, Werner stated that even today we don't possess industrial capabilities to manipulate matter with that level of precision. More significantly, Werner revealed that similar symbols had been documented in other cases involving unidentified aerial phenomena, including an incident near a nuclear facility in Idaho in 1975 and another near a naval vessel in the Pacific in 1981. There's a pattern here that suggests intentional communication, Werner noted. The compass symbols were eventually analyzed by Dr. Michael Sanderson, a cryptographer who had worked on decoding transmissions during the Cold War. Sanderson's analysis suggested that the symbols contained mathematical sequences representing astronomical coordinates. When plotted on a star chart, these coordinates pointed to a star system approximately 39 light-years from Earth, a detail that Sanderson found too precise to be coincidental or meaningless. In a scientific paper published in the Journal of Mathematical Cryptography, Sanderson and his colleagues demonstrated that the sequence of symbols contained mathematical constants expressed in base 8 notation, rather than the base 10 system used in human mathematics. What's remarkable is the elegance of the expression. Sanderson wrote, "These aren't random markings but appear to be deliberate communication utilizing universal mathematical principles." Linda Keller, after reviewing all the evidence, came to believe that her husband had not been the victim of a conventional accident, but had encountered something extraordinary on Lake Michigan. Richard was methodical and observant. His journal entries show he was tracking these phenomena for months. I believe he finally got too close to something someone or something didn't want documented. The official investigation into Richard Keller's disappearance was officially closed in 1996, with the final report listing his status as missing, presumed deceased due to maritime accident. However, the report included an unusual addendum acknowledging unexplained factors that merit further scientific inquiry. The compass remains secured in an FBI evidence facility, occasionally accessed by scientists under special clearance. Linda Keller established the Richard Keller Foundation for Maritime Safety and Unexplained Phenomena, which provides support to families of missing persons and funds independent research into unexplained disappearances. The foundation maintains a comprehensive database of similar incidents across the Great Lakes region, identifying 27 cases between 1976 and 1994 that share key characteristics with Keller's disappearance. In 2002, a Freedom of Information Act request filed by investigative journalist Martin Holloway revealed that in the months following Keller's disappearance, the U.S. Navy had established a temporary research facility in Manitowoc that operated for approximately 6 months. The facility's stated purpose was acoustic research related to submarine detection, but former employees reported unusually strict security protocols and the presence of personnel from agencies not typically involved in such research. Dr. Elizabeth Chen, the linguist who had analyzed the compass symbols, published a comprehensive study in 2008 demonstrating mathematical correlations between the Keller compass markings and similar symbols documented in other cases worldwide. What we're seeing is consistency across incidents separated by vast distances and times, Chen noted. This suggests either a coordinated effort or a standardized system of communication. The scientific implications expanded further in 2010 when Dr. Robert Kaplan, a quantum physicist from Stanford University, published a peer-reviewed paper analyzing the molecular structure of the brass compass housing. Using advanced spectroscopic techniques unavailable during the initial investigation, Kaplan discovered that the molecular alignment of atoms in the areas containing the symbols demonstrated what he termed non-random quantum entanglement patterns. According to Kaplan's research, the precision required to create such patterns exceeds current human technological capabilities by at least several decades, possibly centuries. Coast Guard Captain Eleanor Whitman, who had led the initial search effort, came forward in 2012 after her retirement with previously undisclosed information. "We were instructed to redirect our search efforts away from a specific quadrant of the lake approximately 48 hours into the operation," Whitman stated in a sworn affidavit. "When I questioned the order, I was informed it came directly from the Pentagon." Whitman's logbooks, which she had privately maintained against regulations, showed that the restricted search area precisely overlapped with the coordinates mentioned in Keller's final journal entry. In a development that raised further questions, 3 members of Miller's Navy SEAL recovery team died under unusual circumstances between 1997 and 2005. Lieutenant Commander Thomas Richards died in what was officially ruled a single-car accident, though accident reconstruction specialists noted inconsistencies in the investigation. Chief Petty Officer David Marquez succumbed to an aggressive and rare form of brain cancer that specialists at Johns Hopkins described as consistent with exposure to unknown forms of radiation. The third team member, Lieutenant Robert Patterson, disappeared while hiking alone in Olympic National Park in 2005. Despite one of the most extensive search operations in park history, no trace of Patterson was ever found. The Richard Keller Foundation uncovered another pattern. Of the 27 cases in their database of similar disappearances, 14 of the missing individuals had reported unusual experiences on the water in the weeks preceding their disappearances. More striking was the discovery that 11 of these individuals had backgrounds in specialized technical fields, including aerospace engineering, advanced communications, quantum physics, and satellite technology. This pattern led Dr. Victoria Hayes, the DARPA scientist who had initially investigated the water samples, to publish a controversial paper in 2015 suggesting that selection based on professional expertise cannot be ruled out as a factor in these cases. In 2016, a cache of documents was anonymously delivered to Linda Keller and journalist Martin Holloway. These materials, which appeared to be internal memos from a classified project codenamed Lake Glass, referenced ongoing monitoring of non-conventional transit events in the Michigan Basin region from 1981 to 1994. While the authenticity of these documents could not be independently verified, forensic analysis of the paper and ink dated them to the mid-1980s. Most significant was a memo dated June 15, 1986, the day after Keller's disappearance, that mentioned civilian observation of test asset and recommended immediate retrieval of monitor equipment and data. Astronomers at the University of Arizona's Steward Observatory reported another intriguing connection in 2018. Using archival data from radio telescope observations conducted during the 1980s, they identified unusual radio signals originating from the precise star system indicated by the coordinates encoded in Keller's compass. The signals, detected on 3 separate occasions in 1985 and 1986, exhibited artificial characteristics including precise frequency modulation patterns. Dr. Allison Winters, lead researcher on the project, noted that, while not conclusive, these signals demonstrate non-random structure consistent with artificial generation rather than natural stellar phenomena. Dr. Sanderson expanded his cryptographic analysis in 2019, collaborating with NASA mathematicians to further decode the compass symbols. Their work revealed what appeared to be a precise timestamp, June 14, 1986, at 8:27 p.m. EST, encoded within the geometric pattern. This timestamp exactly matched the moment when radar contact with Keller's vessel was lost and when the circular interference pattern was observed. The statistical probability of this temporal correlation occurring by chance is effectively zero, Sanderson wrote in the Journal of Cryptographic Sciences. Perhaps the most compelling testimony came from Miranda Johnson, a then 17-year-old sailing student who had been on the water approximately 12 miles south of Keller's position on the night he vanished. In a notarized statement provided to the Keller Foundation in 2020, Johnson described observing a perfect circle of light on the water's surface and a column of blue-white light extending upward from the circle. Johnson had not reported her observation initially because, as she stated, my instructor dismissed it as lighthouse reflections, and I was young enough to believe him. When shown radar images of the circular anomaly, Johnson confirmed it matched the size and position of what she had witnessed. In 2022, material scientist Dr. Wayne Harrington conducted non-invasive quantum resonance testing on the compass using technology developed for analyzing extraterrestrial samples returned from Mars missions. His findings revealed that the brass contained isotopic ratios inconsistent with terrestrial manufacturing processes. Particularly notable was the presence of an unusual form of bismuth with quantum properties that, according to Harrington, suggest molecular restructuring through means unknown to current science. The U.S. government's UAP task force, Unidentified Aerial Phenomena, established in 2020, has neither confirmed nor denied investigation into the Keller case. However, former Department of Defense intelligence analyst Christopher Mellon acknowledged in a 2023 interview that historical cases involving physical evidence and multiple credible witnesses were being reassessed under new analytical frameworks that no longer automatically exclude exotic hypotheses when conventional explanations prove inadequate. For the scientific community, the case represents a compelling mystery that bridges multiple disciplines. Dr. James Forrester, who has continued his research into electromagnetic anomalies, summarized it best. The Keller case presents us with physical evidence that defies conventional explanation, documented by credible observers including military personnel. The science suggests something beyond our current technological capabilities was present on Lake Michigan that night. If you've made it this far into this extraordinary case, I want to thank you for joining me on this investigation. What do you think happened to Richard Keller that night on Lake Michigan? Could he have encountered something beyond conventional explanation? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. You won't want to miss our next deep dive into the unexplained incidents that challenge our understanding of reality.